Hello, fifth graders, and happy Wednesday. Today we're going to apply what we've learned about adding and subtracting fractions to solving fraction word problems. I know you're going to do a great job, and so does Mr. Smiles. Let's dive right in. Let's start with our do now. We are going to take the steps to add the fractions 3/4 and 2/3. Let's start by listing our multiples to find the least common denominator. What's the least common denominator of 3/4 and 2/3? List the multiples of 3 and 4 and find the smallest number on both lists. The least common denominator is 12. Now that we know the least common denominator is 12, let's change each fraction so that it has a denominator of 12. 3/4 equals blank over 12. Well, what do I multiply 4 by to get to 12? 4 times 3 is 12. That means I need to multiply 3 times 3 in the numerator. What's 3 times 3? It's 9. So 3/4 is equal to 9/12. 2/3 equals blank over 12. 3 times what is 12? Well, 3 times 4 is 12. What's 2 times 4? 2 times 4 is 8. So 2/3 is equal to 8 over 12. Now I can add the fractions. 9/12 plus 8/12. What is the result when I add those two fractions? Write your answer as an improper fraction. It's 17 over 12. Now I need to change 17 over 12 into a mixed number. What operation do I use to change 17 over 12 into a mixed number? I use division, 17 divided by 12. How many times does 12 go into 17? One time. What's 1 times 12? It's 12. When I subtract, what's 17 minus 12? It's 5. So how do I write the result as a mixed number? Well, I have one whole with 5/12 left over. So 3/4 plus 2/3 is 1 and 5/12. Now look at number 4. Draw a model of 3 and 1/4. Do that on your paper now. Now that you have your model, let's talk about how to convert 3 and 1/4 into an improper fraction. I know that I have 3 groups of 4. What's 3 times 4? It's 12, plus the 1 that's left over. What's 12 plus 1? It's 13, over 4. So when I write 3 and 1/4 as an improper fraction, it's 13 over 4. Convert 13 over 4 into a mixed number, just like we did in problem number 3. Go ahead and do that problem now. When 13 over 4 is written as a mixed number, 4 goes into 13 3 times, with 1 left over out of 4. The answer is 3 and 1/4. Now let's simplify some fractions. 8 over 12. What's the largest number that goes into both 8 and 12? It's 4. When I divide both 8 and 12 by 4, what's the result? 8 over 12, written in simplest form, is 2/3. Now let's try another. Simplify 6 over 12. What's the largest number that goes into both 6 and 12? It's 6. When I divide both 6 and 12 by 6, what's the result? It's 1/2. Now let's simplify 2/12. What's the largest number that goes into both 2 and 12? It's 2. When I divide both 2 and 12 by 2, what's the result? It's 1/6. Now, take a moment to complete your multiplication tables. When you're finished, raise your hand so Ms. Tramontosi can check and give you a raffle ticket. Today we are going to solve word problems with unlike fractions. Let's look at 2 word problems that are similar together. Start with the problem on the left. Ms. Tramontosi brought in several bags of hot chips for the class. 2/5 of the bags were hot fries, and 1/4 of the bags were Takis. What fractions of the chips were either hot fries or Takis? First, what operation would we use to solve this problem? We would use addition. When I see either or, it's asking me to combine the two quantities. The next thing we need to do is find the least common denominator. What's the least common denominator of 2/5 and 1/4? List your multiples and circle the smallest number on both lists. The least common denominator is 20. Now we can convert each fraction into an equivalent fraction with 20 as the denominator. What is 2/5 when the denominator is 20? Fill in the blank. 5 times 4 is 20, and 2 times 4 is 8. What is 1/4 when the denominator is 20? Fill in the blank. 4 times 5 is 20, and 1 times 5 is 5. So 1/4 is equal to 5 over 20. Now I can add the new fractions. What's 8 over 20 plus 5 over 20? It's 13 over 20. So 13 over 20 of the chips were either hot fries or Takis. Now let's look at a similar problem. Miss Tramontosi brought in several bags of hot chips for the class. 2/5 of the bags were hot fries, and 1/4 of the bags were Takis. How much greater was the fraction of bags that were hot fries than the fraction that were Takis? What do we need to do to solve this problem? We need to subtract. In this problem, we are comparing or finding the difference. Remember that the answer to a subtraction problem is called the difference. So when we find how much greater, how much taller, how much farther, anytime we're comparing two quantities, we need to subtract. What's the least common denominator for 2/5 and 1/4? The least common denominator is 20. Now I need to change each fraction so that the denominator is 20. 2/5 is equal to what over 20? 2/5 is equal to 8 over 20. 5 times 4 is 20, and 2 times 4 is 8. 1/4 is equal to what over 20? 1/4 is equal to 5 over 20. Now I can subtract the new fractions. What's 8 over 20 minus 5 over 20? It's 3 over 20. The difference between the two fractions is 3/20. Let's remember the steps of adding or subtracting unlike fractions. Remember, fractions can only be added if they have the same denominator, because the pieces have to be the same size. Make sure your notes look exactly like mine. To add or subtract two fractions with unlike denominators, first, find the least common denominator. Then, change each fraction to an equivalent fraction with the LCD as the denominator. Add or subtract the numerators. The denominator stays the same. Change any improper fractions into mixed numbers. And always simplify fractions. Now let's look at a few more problems. Of the shirts in Kaylin's closet, 1/3 are blue and 1/5 are purple. What fraction of the shirts are either blue or purple? What do you need to do to solve this problem? You need to add to solve this problem. Remember, either or means we're combining both categories. Now find the LCD. What's the least common denominator of 1/3 and 1/5? The LCD is 15. Now I can take both fractions and change them so that the denominator is 15. Change 1/3 so that the denominator is 15. 1/3 is equal to 5 over 15. Change 1/5 so that the denominator is 15. 1/5 is equal to 3 over 15. Now I can solve the addition problem by adding the new fractions. What's 5 over 15 plus 3 over 15? It's 8 over 15. Let's look at another one. Paul bought a pizza on Tuesday. He ate 5/8 of the pizza on Tuesday and another 1/4 of the pizza on Wednesday. How much more pizza did he eat on Tuesday than on Wednesday? What do I need to do to solve this problem? This is a subtraction problem because I'm finding the difference in the amount of pizza he ate. What's the least common denominator for 8 and 4? The least common denominator is 8. Now I need to change each fraction so that the denominator is 8. 5/8 already has a denominator of 8. What is 1/4 when the denominator is 8? 1/4 is equal to 2/8. 4 times 2 is 8, and 1 times 2 is 2. Now I can solve by subtracting the new fractions. What's 5/8 minus 2/8? It's 3/8. Paul ate 3/8 more of the pizza on Tuesday than on Wednesday. Now try 2 on your own. Last week, Jalen read 3/4 of her book. This week, she read another 1/10 of her book. How much more of her book did Jalen read last week than this week? What kind of problem is this? This is a subtraction problem because I have to find the difference between two amounts. Go ahead and subtract 3/4 minus 1/10 now. The correct answer is Jalen read 13/20 more of her book last week than this week. The least common denominator is 20. 3/4 equals 15/20. 1/10 equals 2/20. When I subtract, the result is 13/20. Now let's do another. Janoria was cutting pieces of string for an art project. She cut a piece that was 3/4 feet long and another string that was 5/6 feet long. What was the total length of the string she cut in feet? Write your answer as a fraction, mixed number, or improper fraction. As a fraction or mixed number in simplest form. First, what operation should I use? I need to add to solve this problem because I'm finding a total. I'm putting together the two lengths. So add 3/4 plus 5/6. Write your answer as a mixed number. The correct answer is 1 7/12. You've done a great job on this video. Now move on to IXL Practice L.11 until it's time for your exit ticket.